You are listening to episode 155 of the Autism Mom Coach, Married to Autism. Welcome to the Autism Mom Coach podcast. I am your host, Lisa Candera. I am a lawyer, a life coach, and most importantly, I am the full-time single mother of a teenager with autism. In this podcast, I am going to share with you the tools and strategies you need so you can fight like hell for your child without burning out. Let's get to it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I am so glad you are here, and I hope you are doing well. In this week's episode, I am talking about a topic that comes up a lot in my coaching program, and that is when one of my clients believes that her husband is autistic. And it's usually triggered by them learning more about their child's diagnosis and seeing how it relates to their husband. So maybe it's how literal he is, or how he does not like to socialize, or maybe he disappears during family gatherings because he gets too overwhelmed by all of the noise. Or, and this is a big one, when you say, "I'm fine," he believes you. He's like, "Okay, she's fine. No problem," walks away. And you're there like, I'm fine means I'm not fine, but no, maybe not, right? Maybe he doesn't. And so you get to wondering, wonder if he's autistic. The other way it comes up is in conversations with me where my clients are struggling in their relationships and they're feeling very frustrated. They're feeling alone. They're feeling like they are not emotionally connected with their partner. And they start to tell me some of the things that are happening or not happening. And as the words are coming out of their mouths, they're like, maybe he's autistic. So if this is you, you are not alone. And yes, there have been cases where my clients have either come to me with the realization that they are autistic, or they've known it for years. And so it works both ways. And in my view, not a big surprise, right? We are the parents of children with autism. So the chances that we're autistic or neurodivergent in some way is, I'd say, pretty high. Still, it's likely that if we are having these realizations, our neurodivergence was never diagnosed. Chances are that you and your husband or whoever you think is autistic now as an adult was able to get by enough to not have the diagnosis. But this doesn't mean that it didn't impact their lives, and it's not impacting their life now. It's usually the case when my clients come to me and say, "I think my husband's autistic," and they want to know what to do. First, let's just talk about this realization itself. It's a bit of an emotional roller coaster as I've experienced it through my clients. And what I see at first is like that light bulb moment of excitement, because now things make so much sense. The puzzle pieces are starting to come together. This is finally an explanation for why communication always felt so hard, or validation that you're not imagining things or overreacting or being too needy. But then the frustration or the sadness can set in. For several of my clients who are really extroverted, they love to go out with other couples, they love to go to parties, and it's always been such a slog to bring their partner if they'd even go. Now they're realizing, wait, maybe this is more than just he does not prefer to do this. Maybe it's that he's not even wired to do this, or that doing this is so much more effort than I ever would have expected, or that maybe doing the things that you would love for them to do is so much more effort for them you ever imagined. And you really start to wonder, do I want to force someone to do something that is not aligned with who they are? And so many of us are having these situations in real time with our children. And then when we start to see them in a partner, an adult, well, are we going to apply different rules to them just because they're adults, just because they're in a relationship with us? This is where some of the soul searching and the grief comes in. Grieving the fact that the connection you wanted the way you wanted it might not be possible or likely in the relationship that you have. And then finally, there's the overwhelm of having another person with autism in the family. Because what I've seen for so many of my clients, they are either the only neurotypical person in their house or they are the least neurodivergent. And this can feel overwhelming when you believe that you're the person trying to manage all of these more complex emotional connections and relationships. But in the beginning, it's usually a mix of compassion and understanding. That resentment starts to soften, behaviors feel less personal, and in fact, they make a lot more sense than they ever have. And with that comes the next natural step for so many of us women, which is, all right, what are we going to do about this? Because we are action takers. I see so many of my moms hot off of an autism diagnosis or suspected diagnosis for their husband, wanting to tackle it just like they did their own child's diagnoses. They come to me saying things like, well, he will understand himself better. And if he understands himself better, he'll start doing things differently. And if he starts doing things differently, then this is the key to fixing our relationship and for me feeling better. So they go into having conversations about the autism diagnosis with high expectations. And many times they want to hear what they want to hear. I agree. You're right. This explains a lot. And let's get to work in making adjustments. So if they are the first to bring up the autism diagnosis to their husband or the suspected autism diagnosis, they go into the conversation with really high hopes. And sometimes they hear what they want to hear. The partner agrees. Sometimes he's figured it out before you have, and he thinks you're right. And a lot of times he'll say, yeah, I was thinking that for a while. It makes sense. And maybe they're even ready to make adjustments. But sometimes they don't. This is what you need to be prepared for. If you're suspecting that your partner is on the spectrum, going into a conversation with them without expectations, because this is a lot to hear for any human. You know, you've heard it about your child. And it could be that maybe your husband doesn't agree, or he does not see this as having an impact on the relationship, or whether he sees it or not, he's not exactly excited about doing a deep analysis of himself and creating a behavioral plan for your relationship. So remember, just like when your child was diagnosed, your partner is the same person they were before the diagnosis. You now have new information about him, and you get to decide what to do with it. You get to decide how you want to think about it, feel about it, and respond to your belief or the indications that your partner is autistic. And I want to tell you why this is important. And it all goes back to the fundamentals of what I teach my clients. The diagnosis does not actually matter. Whether he actually is or isn't autistic, whether he agrees or disagrees, it doesn't matter. Because the diagnosis itself is not what has the power to change your relationship. What changes your relationship with your partner and any human being in the world are the thoughts that you have about them. So if your belief that your partner is autistic leads you to have thoughts like, this is how his brain is wired. His behaviors aren't personal. He's not ignoring me. He's just processing things differently. Then what happens? You start to feel more compassion and more understanding. And when you feel that way, it naturally shifts how you show up in the relationship. What you say, what you don't say, how you react, what you let go of, what you make personal, and what you don't. And the opposite is true. If you continue thinking whether he's autistic or not, whether he believes he's autistic or not, if you continue believing he just doesn't care, he's selfish, if he loved me, he would do things differently, then you will continue having the exact same experience you are having in this relationship right now. Not because of him, not because of whether he's autistic or not, but because of how you're thinking about him. The same thing goes, even if he acknowledges it, even if he believes it, but what if he doesn't do anything about it? You can make this mean that he does not care about you and he is selfish. Now, a caveat. I am not telling you to accept behavior that is unacceptable to you, to not have expectations and standards in your relationship. 100% no. But when you have come to the point where you are considering whether or not your partner has the same diagnosis as your child, sans all of the understanding and support that your child is now receiving, I really do encourage you to look at them more than ever with compassion and curiosity, and to assume better intent or even just neutral intent from their behaviors and their actions. Because what I have seen is even with the partners who believe that they are autistic, maybe they believed it before you even brought it up, they acknowledge the impact on the relationship and they are taking steps to do something about it, this not automatically result in marital harmony. And here's why. Let's say your partner does try. When you get home or he gets home, he asks you how work was or how your day was, or just some sort of specific question before leaving the kitchen table to go scroll on his phone or to zone out on a video game. He excuses himself and tells you what he's going to be doing. Or maybe he, and this is one of my clients' husbands, sets a reminder on his phone to hug you. All of these actions are a partner who has heard what their wife has told them and is responding to it in a way that makes sense to them. Does this mean this is now natural and instinctive to them? No. Again, they're the same person they were the day before you told them, and we all agreed that they are autistic. These actions, whether your partner does these things or does not do these things, are not going to be the thing that creates happiness for you. Again, it depends on how you decide to think about these actions. Because remember, what other people do and what they don't do, that's not what creates your feelings. Your feelings aren't caused by what other people do and don't do. They're caused by your thoughts about them. So I've had clients who've had partners who have done things like this, and some clients have been grateful. They've been amused, and they've overall noticed an effort to really try, and they've been appreciative, and that has created a more loving connection. I've also have clients whose partners who have done some of these things, and it has not done that because they've thought things like, he's only doing this because I told him so. It feels forced and awkward. Or if he actually cared, he would not have to be reminded. So then you're right back to the resentment. Again, you get to decide how you want to think about your partner's reactions, and you really need to decide whether it really matters if they're instinctive or not. I know we've been socialized with the idea of the ideal partner who just does the things and you don't have to ask. And I don't know how many people actually have those partners, but there's something in our brains that think that that's how it should be. But again, this is your relationship with your partner who you at this point honestly believe has autism. So just a reminder, believing that he's autistic also means accepting it as well. Accepting that the way he shows love might look different than what you expected. And that his effort, no matter how small to you, is still an effort. And just because it's not natural for him doesn't mean it's not real. In fact, it's a real effort to meet you where you are, and you get to decide whether that is enough. This does not mean you have to settle for a relationship that doesn't meet your needs. This for sure doesn't mean that you have to settle for bad behavior, and I would never advise or condone that. But if neither of these things are the case, what if you stopped measuring love based on whether your partner is autistic or you believe that they're autistic? You don't have to settle, but you also get to decide what's good enough. What are your must-haves in a partner, and does your partner meet them? Do they meet them ideally? Probably not, but guess what? You're not perfect either, and you probably don't meet their ideals perfectly either, because this is a two-way relationship, and where you might really struggle with his lack of communication, I'm going to guess there's a chance that he struggles with your quantity of communication. So taking these things into consideration, is your partner neurodivergent? If that is the case, what does that mean for your relationship? Now that you have this information, what thoughts do you have about your partner that support you in supporting him? And when he feels more supported, is he more likely to come to the table and work with you on this? Because what I have seen from a few of my families, doing the right thing and pleasing their spouse is a moving target because the rules are always changing. Again, if this is a neurodivergent person, somebody who is in black and white, somebody who needs the specifics, somebody who needs the prompts, this isn't because they don't care about you. This is because it's how their brain is wired. And just like with our children, we can put supports and reminders and all that stuff in place. And ultimately, are we willing to accept them for who they are with their flaws, just like we want them to accept us for who we are with our flaws? All right, a couple of final thoughts. Being in a house filled with neurodivergent people can be really challenging, and it is true you may not be getting your needs met from the folks in your house. That's okay. You really can seek support elsewhere and let go of the shoulds of who should and should not be giving you support in any given moment. So if you have a group of friends or family members or a coach or a therapist, these are ways that you can get the support that you need. And also grieving the loss of the relationship you wanted or thought you would have, that is valid too. And so it is important to validate your experience. And know that even when the folks in your household are neurodivergent and have different needs, you still have the right to take care of yourself and to set boundaries and to let other people know what you need. Okay, final thought. If you're starting to suspect your spouse might be autistic, here are some takeaways. 1, you don't need him to agree with this for your relationship to improve. You don't need a diagnosis for things to shift. The way you think about him will change everything. You can take this knowledge and you can use it to let go of resentments, set boundaries that work for you, and communicate in ways that feel better. And communicate clearly because, again, our neurodivergent friends aren't really cued into all of our social cues that we are pissed off, right? Like the I'm fine. So being very specific, I would like you to do this. And what I have seen from many of my clients is their partners are very receptive to these very specific communications. And then finally, you don't have to figure it out all today, and you don't have to figure it out for everyone. If you are wanting additional support for yourself, then you should absolutely seek it out, whether it's in friends or family. And of course, I'm always going to offer myself up as a source of support for you as an autism mom and as someone who has coached autism moms for the past 5 years. I've coached my clients through a lot of different challenges, and now they have the tools to do this for themselves. So if that is of interest to you, schedule your consultation now and let's talk. All right, everyone, have a great week, and I will talk to you next. Thanks for listening to the Autism Mom Coach. If you are ready to apply the principles you are learning in these episodes to your life, it is time to schedule a consultation call with me. Podcasts are great, but the ahas are fleeting. Real change comes from application and implementation, and this is exactly what we do in my one-on-one coaching program. To schedule your consultation, go to my website, theautismmomcoach.com, work with me, and take the first step to taking better care of yourself so that you can show up as the parent you want to be for your child with autism.